All right, welcome, my beautiful people, to This Week in Review. I'm going to get right into this week's question, and it's appropriate because of the tropical storm that's lingering out in the ocean, and most of South Florida and the Gulf is preparing for this tropical storm. But what I want to talk about today is how you should be preparing as a short-term rental manager or a host for a potential natural disaster. Now, if you follow this channel, you've heard me say this a lot. You should have policies and procedures related to a lot of your operations. One of those policies and procedures is how to respond to natural disasters and how to prepare for natural disasters. It's very important. And again, if you are operating in an area that's accessible, that is prone to natural disasters like South Florida, we get hurricane and tropical storms all the time. If you're in California, earthquakes, flash flooding, etc., then you should have policies in place and not wait to the last minute to start preparing for these natural disasters. So I'm going to go ahead and just go over our policy and how it reads and some of the stuff that we have in our policy, and then some of the things that are within that policy, right? So the purpose of the policy is to establish guidelines for responding to natural disasters, particularly hurricanes and tropical storms, to ensure the safety of guests, protect property, and maintain business continuity. Okay, that's the purpose. Then here's the scope of our policy. Number one is preparation and planning. Within that preparation and planning, you should be monitoring weather conditions. You should have an emergency kit. You should prepare your property. Next is going to be communication with guests. Now I'm going to go into each of these, but I'm going to run them real quick. Then what to do during the storm, what to do after the storm, property inspections and damage assessment, repairs and maintenance, insurance and financial consideration, filing insurance claims, guest refunds and relocations, review and continuous improvement, or what we refer to as a post-operation report, staff training, and then lastly will be staff training. So now let's dive into the scope and some of the stuff that you should be doing. Preparation and planning is going to be very important. Within that, you or someone in your staff should be monitoring the weather conditions, and it should be from a reliable source. So once you hear that there's a potential for a tropical storm or a hurricane that's coming to your area, then you should activate this policy, right? You should activate your natural preparedness policy. Now, within that, what step of this policy is going to depend on what type of natural disaster you're having. But even before something's coming, there's a couple of things that you should already have in place. For example, an emergency kit. And for us, an emergency kit, each property already has a first aid kit. Each property has a flashlight. Each property has extra batteries, and each property has a portable battery-operated radio. Your staff, though, you should also be taking care of your staff. Make sure your staff has these items as well as non-perishable foods. For example, we have generators on hand to make sure that the office is up and running as quickly as possible. Making sure that we have, for example, Starlink, which is a satellite Wi-Fi. In case the cell towers go down, we'll have Wi-Fi access because of Starlink. And that's something that's very important. People, living in South Florida, I've gone through a lot of hurricanes. And as a business, especially today, and especially a business like ours where we operate remote most of the time, Wi-Fi access is very important. If you don't have something like Starlink, be prepared to take your operations elsewhere, right? Because you're going to have the need to access Wi-Fi so you can communicate with your guests and communicate with those guests that were scheduled to come but didn't come as a result of the storm. That's very important. Then is going to be preparing the property itself. Our policy is once we get a hurricane watch, then we'll start to activate the following. Number one, we activate the guest communication. This guest communication is us notifying either guests that are going to be on the property during the passing of the storm, or guests that are supposed to arrive either just before or during the storm. And our communication, again, depending on whether they're on the property or depending on if they're coming, we inform our guests of the potential hazards of the storm, and we encourage our guests to leave. Now, if they're current guests and they're staying on the property, if they decide to leave, we refund unused days, right? Guests that are coming, and then this is personal preference. This is not, you don't have to do what we do, but guests that are coming as a result of a storm, we normally do not refund those guests. If they're within that window, right? Within the cancellation window. If it's outside the cancellation window, if it's outside of the cancellation window, we don't refund it. If it's within the cancellation window, obviously they get a refund. Our property refund policy is flexible, so they have up to 5 days, up to 5 days prior to check-in, they get a full refund. They get a partial refund up to 2 days. But if they wait to the last minute, like 2 or 3 days, 2 days before arrival, and they don't cancel, I'm not giving them a refund because they've been informed of the storm. We've notified them of their eligibility to get the refund. If they decide not to take us up on that offer because they're going to gamble or risk coming in and then the storm happens and their flights get canceled, I'm not giving them a refund for that, right? But what's important here is that you communicate with your guests, remind them of your cancellation policy, but more important, if they're going to be affected, that you try to either relocate them, switch if you can, switch their reservation to another day, because again, you don't know the severity of the storm, you don't know if you're going to receive any damages, all that stuff comes into play. But more importantly, if they're on your property and for whatever reason they decide to ride out the storm, make sure that you get that in writing, that you had notified them to evacuate. So for example, some of our properties have mandatory evacuation. So if there's mandatory evacuation from the city, they have to leave. But we have areas we have properties that we know will get affected, but they're not within the mandatory evacuation zone. In those cases, we have them sign a waiver, letting them know that we are instructing them to leave, but obviously we can't force them to leave, but we are instructing them to leave. And if they decide to stay, they need to sign that waiver for your protection. Now, preparation of the property, make sure that each property gets protected by ensuring that all outdoor furniture, decoration, and other loose items are secured either indoors or in a storage. Make sure your windows, shutters, your shutters, windows, and doors are protected. Hopefully you have, if you're in South Florida, hopefully you have hurricane windows, but if not, make sure you shutter them up. And then going back to your guests, make sure you provide your guests with evacuation zones and routes so they're prepared to do so. A lot of them may not be able to fly out, so make sure they understand what the mandatory evacuation orders are, and make sure that they have an evacuation zone and route so that they know where they're going. Now, during the storm, There's really not much you're going to be able to do during the storm. But immediately after the storm, post-storm, very important that you reach out to each guest and reach out to your owners. Now, same thing, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, our policy is during a hurricane watch, we notify our owners that we're under hurricane watch and what our processes are going to be during this watch. Same thing, what we're going to do during the warnings, etc. Post-storm, right? Once the storm passes, make sure you check in on your owners. Make sure they're good to go. I mean, not owners, your guests. Make sure they're good to go. Then begin your property inspection and damage assessment. Make sure you have your teams that are going to go out there and make sure that they're checking everything that needs to be checked. If there's any damages or maintenance issues that are safety related, make sure that gets taken care of first, because the other stuff can wait a little bit. Make sure you document. Now, I forgot to mention this in the pre-preparation phase. Photographs and videos are going to be very important on the condition of the property prior to the storm. Insurance companies are going to need that if you're going to be filing a claim. So post-storm, same thing. Make sure you're photographing and videotaping and documenting your damages. As it relates to the guests and some refunds and relocation, I already touched on that, but that's in our policy as well as to what we're going to do in terms of relocation and or what we're going to do in terms of refunds. But in relocation, a lot of you guys are only operating 1, 2, maybe 3 properties. In those cases, I would team up with the platform they booked under. If it's a direct booking, then this will be your responsibility. But if they're booking under a platform, notify that platform of what the situation is so they can help you relocate these guests. Very important. The big thing here is you're going to be busy. It's going to be very chaotic, but your guests should be your priority. Make sure that they're either relocated, make sure that they're safe. Don't get so caught up to forget that fact. After, again, post-storm, and once everything settles down, here's something that I highly recommend you do, which is called a post-incident review. Here is where you should get together with your staff and write an after-action report. Was everything followed? Was anything missed? What can you do to better your processes and procedure? That after-action report and that post-incident review is critical because it's going to help you update your policies and procedures, and you can use it as a learning situation in terms of how you are operating your business. Extremely important. Anyway, hope that information was useful. Let's go on to our revenue. Now, into a new month, first week, the first couple of days. This past week, we made $37,270. We had 252 nights booked. We're at almost 72% occupancy rate. Average daily rate is 148. RevPAR is 106. Airbnb came in number 1 in terms of revenue at 22,000. We're at 4,400. Bookings at 4,400. Verbal is at 3,000, and all others are at 2,700. RevPAR, Fort Lauderdale is 257. We have, what's here? Deerfield Beach is at 203, and all others are at 101. In terms of staffing, we just had one of our maintenance guys resign. He's moving up to the Northeast. So we're currently looking to hire a maintenance personnel. If you're interested, just DM me, and I'll give you the details. Project progress. As you can see, I'm back in Georgia. Our grapes are in. We're gonna start to. And once it's weird because we have our we have white grapes and we have I believe it's a Merlot or yeah I think it's a Merlot. I am like I said I'm learning the wine industry, but the cool part is the interesting part for me was that our white grapes are still not ready to be harvested, but our Merlot is pretty cool, pretty cool. Anyways, I'll give you some updates on that as we start to harvest this and start producing wines. I do have a bottle of one of the wines, one wine that was used for our grapes. I posted it on my Instagram. So again, if you really want to know what we're about, what we're into, follow me on Instagram. I do a lot on Instagram. Well, that's it. If you have any questions, comments, list them below. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the channel. If you want to have a conversation with me, then buy me a coffee. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.